It struck without warning, a violent tremble beneath the surface that sent shockwaves across borders and lives into chaos. In Myanmar, entire buildings crumbled in seconds, trapping dozens beneath layers of debris. As of now, the death toll has risen to at least 144, with over 700 injured, and officials fear those numbers are only the beginning. Hundreds of miles away in Bangkok, the devastation still found a way to make itself felt. A high-rise under construction collapsed like a house of cards, and rescue crews are still too afraid to enter the wreckage, fearing the rubble is too unstable to survive even a second quake. Across the city, rooftop pools spilled water like broken levees, and tower blocks swayed as terrified residents sprinted into the streets. It's a moment frozen in fear and uncertainty. A disaster that started deep underground, but has now shaken an entire region to its core. From the 20th floor of a Bangkok high-rise, Sebastian Wolf felt the world twist beneath him. One moment, it was an ordinary day. The next, the floor lurched, windows rattled, and walls groaned under the weight of invisible pressure. The entire building was shaking, he recalled, still visibly shaken hours later. People were screaming, running down the stairwells. I thought, maybe it's safer to stay put. Outside his window, a surreal sight unfolded. A rooftop pool across the street violently spilled over, cascading like a waterfall down the sides of a luxury tower. He pulled out his phone, instinctively filming, unsure if what he was seeing was real or the beginning of something much worse. This wasn't my first earthquake, and he said, but it was by far the strongest and the scariest. Even now, buildings around him remain evacuated. Emergency sirens echo in the distance, and authorities continue inspecting towers for hidden cracks and structural damage. We're just waiting, he said. No one knows if it's over or if another one's coming. While the tremors in Bangkok sparked panic and prompted evacuations, the real catastrophe was unfolding across the border in Myanmar. There, the quake delivered its full fury. Entire communities were flattened in minutes. Buildings, many old, unreinforced, and never designed to withstand such force, crumbled under their own weight. Rescue crews, overwhelmed and under-resourced, scrambled through unstable debris, often with nothing more than their bare hands. Official numbers confirm at least 144 dead and more than 700 injured, but with communication lines down and remote villages still unreachable, those figures are likely just the beginning. Unlike Thailand, where modern skyscrapers and building codes offered some protection, Myanmar's infrastructure was ill-prepared. In the chaos, families are still searching for loved ones, while hospitals overflow with the wounded. As night fell, emergency shelters filled up, and many had no choice but to sleep in the streets, fearing aftershocks and further collapse. The heartbreak is heavy, and the help, heartbreakingly slow to arrive. To understand just how a single moment beneath the earth could cause this much chaos, we turn to Columbia University seismologist John Cullen Mutter. His explanation is chilling in its simplicity. The quake was shallow, and that's what made it deadly. When an earthquake strikes closer to the surface, the energy has nowhere to go but outward, into cities, homes, and lives. Mutter points to the Sagang Fault, a volatile geological crack running through Myanmar, eerily similar to California's infamous San Andreas Fault. This was the kind of strike-slip fault that causes sudden horizontal shifts. It's like pulling the seam of the earth apart. The quake's magnitude, estimated in the high sevens, put it on par with the historic 1906 San Francisco earthquake, one of the most destructive in U.S. history. But unlike San Francisco, Myanmar lacks the emergency infrastructure, warning systems, or even enforced building codes needed to handle such an event. They don't have a FEMA. They don't have a USGS. They have very little, Mutter said bluntly. In Bangkok, the codes are stricter, but even there, no building is truly invincible. As Mutter warned, you'll always see damage from something this big. As rescue teams raced against time, a grim reality set in. Many couldn't even reach the victims. In Bangkok, the partially collapsed construction site remained a haunting symbol of helplessness. Dozens were believed to be trapped inside, but the wreckage was deemed too unstable to enter. Any wrong step could trigger a deadly secondary collapse. What made it worse was the looming threat of aftershocks. Even weaker tremors could be catastrophic for structures already cracked and barely holding together. Sirens pierced the air as emergency crews stood by, waiting for word that it was safe to go in. But that word never came. Meanwhile, residents across the city were being urged to stay out of high-rises. Many couldn't return home, unsure if their buildings would stand through the night. Adding to the fear were unconfirmed reports of a possible second wave. "We were told another one might hit," Sebastian had said earlier. "So we're eating dinner in a wide side street. No buildings around us, just waiting." That waiting, the silence after the shock, is often the most terrifying part. As daylight fades and the dust begins to settle, what's left behind isn't just rubble, it's grief, fear, and the overwhelming uncertainty of what comes next. In Myanmar, communities are mourning their dead even as they dig through debris with the hope of finding survivors. Hospitals are stretched to their limits, families are separated, and shelter is scarce. The government, acknowledging the scale of the disaster, has called on the international community for urgent aid. With little infrastructure, limited emergency response, and aftershocks still possible, the country simply cannot recover alone. In contrast, Thailand's relative stability has become a sobering reminder of the uneven risks disasters expose. But whether in Bangkok or deep in Myanmar, one thing is clear. This tragedy has touched lives across borders. And for the thousands now displaced, traumatized, or still waiting for word from a missing loved one, the earthquake may have lasted only seconds, but its impact will be felt for years to come. What they need now isn't just rescue, it's the world's attention and its compassion.
Tụi tụi làm đấy bác. Tụi làm luôn đấy tụi. Cáp đây cáp. Làm này. Nàn trang quá.
Set na. Ang lakas na nandun. Okay lang kayo dyan. Minto na, no? Minto na.